Welcome back to the Wealth Fact, where we don't just talk about money, but what it means to have it. Today, we're going to step into something that makes people feel uncomfortable. It's a question that comes up in silent moments of seeing rich people online. Is it immoral to be rich? Let's fill your pocket. From the beginning, humanity has always been uneasy with wealth. In the temples of ancient Greece, philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Epictetus asked what it meant to live a good life. Not a rich life, not a powerful life, but a good life. They viewed the pursuit of wealth as dangerous, precisely because it often distorted virtue. Money was always seen not as evil itself, but as a test, a distraction from higher aims of wisdom, courage, and self mastery. Epictetus, who was born a slave, understood this contradiction immediately. To him, freedom was internal. You could own nothing and yet be free. You can own everything and yet be a slave to your desire. He saw wealth as something fleeting. In the early Christian tradition, wealth was often seen as an impediment to salvation. The rich young ruler was told by Jesus to give everything away, and when he could not, he turned away. The warning was not against money per se, but against its power to close the heart, to shield us from compassion, to make us believe we are more than others. The medieval church saw wealth as a moral hazard. To have money was to be tempted, and the wealthy were called to give it, not out of guilt, but out of obligation. The word charity comes from the Latin word caritas, meaning love. Giving was not about generosity, it was about justice. By the time the Renaissance came around, wealth began to be reframed. The merchant class rose, the banker became not a villain, but someone everyone wanted to be. Art, science, and commerce bloomed under the financial support of the rich. With the Enlightenment came a new idea that a person could be wealthy and good, even to the point where their wealth proved their moral worth, as long as it was earned and used wisely. Critics of wealth argue it is not merely that rich have more, but that the rich having more means others have less. This inequity is not just economical, but ethical. They don't go against prosperity because they secretly wish to have it for themselves. They see the world in which the accumulation of riches often rides on the shoulders of those without power. They ask, how can it be just to have billions while others have nothing to eat? How can there be good and profit extracted from cheap labor, environmental destruction, and political influence? They don't simply say the rich have more. They say the rich having more means others must have less, not by coincidence, but by force. Their claim is simple. The existence of extreme wealth requires the existence of extreme poverty. They look at the working poor, the factory collapses, the polluted river, the homeless encampments next to the iconic skyscrapers, and they ask, how can it be right? How can a system that allows this to happen be moral? To them, the problem isn't money. It's the moral indifference that money can buy. It is the ability to live above the river while the city floods. And it's political power that wealth consolidates, enabling the rich not only to escape responsibility, but to write the rules themselves. In this view, wealth is not a reward. It's a sign of a rigged system. It's not a reflection of goodness. It's a sign of extraction. They read about record profits and then look at the food banks overwhelmed by working families. They see celebrities auctioning off NFTs for millions, while teachers crowdsource school supplies. How can this be right? To them, the problem isn't the money, it's how money becomes worshipped in that society. How can this be right? It's because the problem is that society starts to worship money. It becomes insulation, a buffer between the wealthy and the consequences of their decisions. It becomes permission to pollute, to avoid taxes, to fire workers and still collect bonuses. And it becomes silence, the ability to opt out of shared pain, to watch the world burn from their yacht. It becomes the gated community where empathy is filtered through tinted windows and philanthropy to fend off criticism. Wealth in this view doesn't just grant privilege, it grants power to redefine morality itself. It gives the rich the tools to rewrite the rules, to fund the politicians who protect their interests, to lobby for laws which shield their assets, to dictate the terms of the public conversation through media ownership and think tank influence. In this view, wealth isn't a reward for hard work or ingenuity. They think of it this way: when seeing people with wealth, this person has successfully extracted more than they've given. They do not ignore that some fortunes are built with brilliance, innovation, and vision, but they point out that even these stories are incomplete without extraction, without examining the conditions that made it possible: the labor outsourced, the tax avoided, the subsidies granted, and the communities displaced. The argument is not about saying that rich people are evil. They're not anti-success. They're anti-exploitation, anti-system that requires winners to stand on losers. They remind us that behind every self-made story is often an invisible web of workers, infrastructure, historical context, and privilege. That wealth is often rarely accumulated and is often extracted. That fortunes don't grow in a vacuum. They grow in soil prepared by others, sometimes at their expense. Because when profit is possible without responsibility, when fortunes rise while wage stagnates, when CEOs make 400 times what their workers do, the question isn't whether the system is working, it's who is it working for. And when the answer is the few, then the moral case against wealth isn't as radical as it sounds. It's a reasonable response to a world where 1% of the population controls nearly half the wealth, while the rest is left for everyone else to fight over. This moral lens doesn't reject ambition. It rejects the kind of ambition that turns a blind eye to consequences. It rejects a society where value is measured only in dollars, and success is defined of how much you've accumulated before anyone notices. And it calls back to a deeper meaning, that no one is free until we all are. And that's the true measure of a society. It is not how many millionaires are produced, but how few people are left behind. Let's not stop there. Let's tilt the diamond to see the other face. Wealth can be moral, profoundly moral. In fact, when earned ethically and used wisely, it can be one of the most moral forces on earth. Yes, wealth can corrupt. Yes, fortunes can be built on the back of others. But wealth, true wealth, can be moral, not just justified, not just tolerated, but deeply good. Because what is wealth, if not potential in a physical form? Potential to solve problems, to serve, to uplift others, to create value, to innovate in ways to improve others' lives. These are services. When some people build a business that feeds families, heals bodies, and enlightens minds, and that business succeeds, isn't that a kind of good? Wealth earned through creation, contribution, and risk is a reflection of courage and vision. It is a byproduct of usefulness. The inventor, the artist, the builder, the teacher, the entrepreneur, when they are well paid, it sends a message to them that you matter. And wealth, when used as a tool, not a trophy, it becomes a form of power that you can channel into justice, into access, into education, and into community. Consider this: almost every leap forward in humanity's progress required wealth. Vaccines weren't scaled by monks. They were scaled by funded labs. Universities weren't built by the poor. They were built by endowments. Civil movements weren't free. They were bankrolled by someone with money. The philanthropist who builds hospitals, the venture capitalist who funds clean energy, the athlete who builds schools, the founder who gives equity to employees, these are not stories of greed. They're stories of humanity. And when wealth is in the right hands, it's not a threat. And that leads us to the question, what do you do with it? Perhaps the question is not whether wealth is moral, but what it demands of you once you have it. Because wealth, like fire, can cook your food or burn your house. It is neutral in theory, but never in practice. It bends towards its owner. The truly moral question is not about being rich, it's about being aware of your impact, your footprint, of the invisible systems your dollars touch. What do you fund when you spend? What do you support when you invest? What kind of future are you building with your capital? The Stoics see wealth not as a gift, but a responsibility. Money only makes you more of who you are. If you are kind, money lets you be generous. If you are selfish, money makes you dangerous. To condemn all wealth is to blind yourself to its potential. To lump every millionaire in every monopolist is to confuse means with motive. If you want to pursue wealth, and I believe you should, pursue it with open eyes, earn with your own real effort, and never forget wealth is not the goal, it's a means to a greater end. You don't need to be a billionaire to make a difference. You need to be committed to using what you have, be it time, money, talent, or influence, in ways that leaves a positive impact in the communities you come across. Pause and imagine this thought experiment. Tomorrow morning, you wake up and there's suddenly $100 million in your bank account. What do you do next? You didn't cheat, you didn't steal it. It was just wired into your account. Do you hide it? Do you give it all away? Do you live exactly as before? Think carefully, because this thought experiment lies the moral test of wealth. Almost no one would give it all away, but almost no one would hoard it either. Yes, there's a dark side to money, but light shines just as often, if not more. So let's be clear, wealth isn't the enemy of virtue, it's selfish self-interest. But wealth that sees, wealth that gives, and wealth that builds, that's not something to turn your back on and call immoral. And when you become rich in any form, ask yourself, who else will be richer because I lived? Who else will live a better life because I existed? Thanks for listening. Until next time.